They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but mine was served on the hottest day of June in front of 350 people at my daughter's college graduation. My name is Eleanor Davidson, and for 23 years, I played the role of the perfect wife, supportive, understanding, always putting everyone else first. I hosted dinner parties, volunteered at charity events, and smiled through countless business functions while my husband, Richard, climbed the corporate ladder at Henderson and Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. But on June 15, 2024, as our daughter Cassandra prepared to receive her diploma from Harvard Law School, Richard decided it was the perfect moment to destroy our family. What he didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for this exact moment. And when I finally revealed what I'd done, his screams echoed across Harvard Yard loud enough to make even the statue of John Harvard turn his bronze head. This is the story of how I turned my husband's cruelty into the sweetest victory of my life. The announcement. The morning started like something out of a magazine. The June sun filtered through the curtains of our suite at the Charles Hotel, casting golden light across the cream-colored walls. I had my hair done at 8, my makeup perfect by 9, and I slipped into the emerald green dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion, Cassandra's favorite color on me. Richard emerged from the bathroom in his tailored navy suit, adjusting his Rolex, the one I'd given him for our 20th anniversary. He looked handsome, distinguished, every inch the successful attorney. For a moment, I remembered the young man I'd married in 1991, full of ambition and promises. "Eleanor," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone I'd learned to dread over the past year, cold, detached, businesslike. "We need to talk before we leave." I was applying my lipstick, a classic red that Cassandra insisted made me look fierce. I met his eyes in the mirror. "Can't it wait? We need to be at the ceremony in 40 minutes. "No," he crossed his arms. "Actually, this is perfect timing. I want you to understand the situation before we're surrounded by people." Something in his stance made my stomach drop, but I kept my face serene. 23 years of marriage teaches you to mask your reactions. "What situation?" "I'm leaving you." 4 words, delivered as casually as if he were announcing he was leaving for the office. I slowly capped my lipstick, buying myself time to process. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm leaving you, Eleanor. I've already spoken to my attorney. The papers will be filed on Monday." He checked his watch, as if this conversation were just another item on his schedule. "I wanted to tell you now so we can maintain civility throughout today's events, for Cassandra's sake." The audacity of it stole my breath. "You're telling me you're divorcing me on our daughter's graduation day for her sake?" "I thought it was better than blindsiding you next week." He had the nerve to sound reasonable. "This way, you have time to adjust your expectations." "Adjust my expectations," I repeated, slowing. My hands were remarkably steady as I stood and faced him fully. "How considerate of you, Richard." He missed the ice in my tone entirely. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been practical, Eleanor. It's one of the things I appreciated about you. Past tense, appreciated. The truth is, I've been unhappy for years. I've outgrown this marriage, and I deserve to spend my remaining years with someone who excites me." "Someone?" I raised an eyebrow. "Would this someone have a name?" For the first time, he looked uncomfortable. "That's not relevant to this conversation." "Oh, I think it's very relevant. Let me guess. Is it Meredith from your firm, the 28-year-old paralegal who laughs at all your jokes?" His jaw tightened. "This isn't about Meredith." "So it is Meredith." I almost laughed. The cliché of it all. The middle-aged lawyer leaving his wife for a younger woman. How original, Richard. Did you come up with this plan all by yourself, or did she help? "Don't be bitter, Eleanor. It's unattractive." He straightened his tie. "I'm prepared to be fair in the settlement. You'll keep the house in Newton, obviously, and I'll provide reasonable support until you can establish yourself financially." "Reasonable support," I murmured, "until I can establish myself financially?" Well, you haven't worked in 20 years. You'll need time to figure out your next steps. He said this as if he were doing me a favor. I think a year of full support is more than generous. Then we can reassess based on your employment situation. This was the moment, the one I'd been simultaneously dreading and anticipating for 6 months. Ever since I'd first seen the text messages on his phone, ever since I'd hired the private investigator, ever since I'd started planning my response to this inevitable conversation. I smiled, a real smile, one that clearly unnerved him because he took a small step back. "What?" he asked suspiciously. "Nothing," I said sweetly. "You're absolutely right. We should maintain civility for Cassandra's sake. Shall we go? We don't want to be late." The ceremony. Harvard Yard was magnificent that morning, filled with the excited chatter of graduates and their families. Red balloons floated against the blue sky, and a string quartet played classical music as people found their seats. Richard and I sat in the section reserved for families of graduates, surrounded by other proud parents. My son, Marcus, arrived just as the ceremony was beginning. At 26, he'd driven up from New York, where he worked as a financial analyst. He kissed my cheek and shook his father's hand before sliding into the seat beside me. "You look beautiful, Mom," he whispered. "Thank you, sweetheart." "Is everything okay? You seem—" He studied my face. "Different." I patted his hand. "Everything is perfect. Just watch your sister. This is her day." And it was. Cassandra looked radiant in her cap and gown, her dark hair falling in waves down her back, so much like mine had at her age. When they called her name, Cassandra Jane Davidson, Juris Doctor, magna cum laude, I felt my eyes fill with tears. My baby, now a Harvard-educated attorney. Richard leaned over during the applause. "I hope this doesn't need to be said, but I expect you to keep our situation private today. Let's not ruin Cassandra's achievement with personal drama." I turned to him with that same smile. "Of course, darling. I completely agree. Let's keep things civilized." He looked relieved. The fool actually looked relieved. The reception. The reception was held at the Harvard Faculty Club, an elegant space with high ceilings, mahogany panels, and views of the campus. Cassandra had invited about 50 people, close family, friends, a few professors who'd mentored her. Richard had also insisted on inviting several of his colleagues from the firm, including the senior partners, and of course, Meredith. She arrived in a dress that was slightly too tight and definitely too young for the occasion, her blonde hair in elaborate curls. I watched Richard's face light up when he saw her, watched the way his hand lingered on the small of her back as he introduced her to people as one of our brightest paralegals. Marcus noticed too. "Mom, is Dad—" "Not now, honey," I said quietly. "Soon. Just trust me." The luncheon proceeded beautifully. Cassandra gave a touching speech about how her parents' support had made her success possible, how she'd watched her father's dedication to law and her mother's strength, and how those examples had shaped her. I saw Richard shifting uncomfortably during the parts about me, while Meredith stared at her salmon with sudden intense interest. Then came the toasts. Cassandra's roommate spoke, then her favorite professor, and then Richard stood up. "I'd like to say a few words about my remarkable daughter," he began, and launched into a prepared speech about Cassandra's achievements, her bright future, how proud he was. Standard father of the graduate material. But then, at the end, he went off script. "Cassandra, as you embark on this new chapter, I want you to know that your old man is also starting a new chapter." He paused, looking directly at Meredith with a smile that made my stomach turn. Life is too short to stay stagnant. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices to pursue our own happiness. I hope you'll understand that parents are people too, with our own dreams and desires. The room went very quiet. Several people glanced between Richard, Meredith, and me. Cassandra's face had gone pale. Richard continued, oblivious or uncaring. "Your mother and I have decided to go our separate ways. It's an amicable decision, and we hope you'll support us both as we move forward independently." Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus grabbed my hand under the table. Cassandra looked like she might cry. Richard was still talking. "Your mother will always be the mother of my children, and I'll always respect her for that, but—" "Sit down." The voice was mine, but I hardly recognized it. Strong, clear, cutting through his self-serving speech like a knife. He looked at me in surprise. "Eleanor, we agreed to be civilized." I said, "Sit down." I stood up, smoothing my dress. "Since you've decided to make our private life a public spectacle at our daughter's graduation, I think it's only fair that everyone hears the whole truth." "Mom?" Cassandra's voice was small. I looked at my daughter and softened my tone. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I wanted this date to be perfect for you, but your father has forced my hand." Richard's face was turning red. "Eleanor, don't you dare." "Don't I dare what? Tell the truth?" I turned to address the room. "My husband did tell me this morning that he's leaving me. What he didn't tell you all is that he's been having an affair with his paralegal, Meredith Collins, for the past 18 months. Meredith gasped. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I've known about it for 6 months," I continued calmly. "I hired a private investigator in December after I found some particularly explicit text messages on Richard's phone. The investigator was very thorough. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even photographs of them together at a conference in Miami that Richard told me was partners only." Marcus was staring at his father with an expression of pure disgust. Several of Richard's colleagues were shifting uncomfortably. "Eleanor, stop this immediately," Richard hissed. "Oh, I'm just getting started, darling." I pulled my phone from my clutch. You see, once I knew about the affair, I started doing some additional investigating, and I discovered some very interesting things about your finances, Richard. His face went from red to white. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the offshore accounts, the ones in the Cayman Islands that you thought I didn't know about." I smiled at his expression. "The accounts where you've been hiding money from our marriage for the past 5 years, roughly $2.3 million at last count." The room erupted in whispers. John Henderson, the senior partner of Richard's firm, leaned forward with sharp interest. "That's a lie," Richard shouted. "She's making this up because she's hurt." "Am I?" "Because I have all the documentation right here." I held up my phone. "Account numbers, transfer records, everything. I've also forwarded copies to your firm's ethics committee, the Massachusetts Bar Association, and, oh yes, the IRS." Richard's face was now a fascinating shade of purple. "You had no right." "I had every right. That money was marital property that you were hiding to avoid giving me my fair share in the divorce. It's also income you didn't report on our tax returns, which makes it tax fraud. And since you're an attorney, Richard, I'm sure you're aware that tax fraud can lead to disbarment." John Henderson stood up. "Richard, is this true?" "John, I can explain." "Is it true?" Henderson's voice was steel. Richard's silence was answer enough. "We'll be conducting an immediate investigation," Henderson said coldly. "Richard, consider yourself on administrative leave effective immediately." "You bitch!" Richard whirled on me. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Oh, I know exactly what I've done." I was still smiling. "But wait, there's more." "More?" His voice cracked. "Did you really think I spent the last 23 years just hosting dinner parties and volunteering? I went back to school, Richard, online at night while you were working late. Or should I say, while you claimed to be working late." I paused for effect. "I completed my MBA from Boston University last month. I've also been consulting for a nonprofit organization for the past year, and as of next month, I'm their new Chief Operations Officer. Salary, $185,000 annually, plus benefits." Marcus burst out laughing. He couldn't help it. "Mom, you're incredible." "So you see, Richard, I won't be needing your reasonable support after all. In fact, given that I now have proof you've been hiding assets, my attorney is confident I'll be entitled to at least half of everything you actually own, including that hidden $2.3 million. Richard was shaking with rage. "You planned this. All of this." "Of course I did. You think I was going to let you blindside me with a divorce and walk away with our money while I'm left with nothing?" I tilted my head. "You forgot who you were dealing with, Richard. I didn't spend 23 years supporting your career, raising our children, managing our household, and building our social network to be discarded like last season's fashion. I'll fight you on every penny." "You can try, but you'll be doing it while defending yourself against tax fraud charges and ethics violations. I don't think you're in a very strong negotiating position." I glanced at Meredith, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. "And by the way, Meredith, I'd start looking for a new job. Something tells me the firm won't want to keep the paralegal who was sleeping with a partner, especially one involved in financial fraud." Meredith fled the room in tears. Richard stood there, his chest heaving, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Then he started screaming. "You've destroyed me! You vindictive, calculating! How could you do this? Today of all days!" "Today of all days?" I laughed, a real laugh this time. "You're the one who chose to announce our divorce at our daughter's graduation, Richard. You made this bed. I'm just making sure you lie in it alone." "This isn't over, Eleanor." "Oh, it very much is." I picked up my champagne glass. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to toast my daughter properly." Richard stormed out, knocking over a chair in his fury. Several people applauded as he left. I turned to Cassandra, who was staring at me with wide eyes. "Mom," she whispered, "did you really just—" "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know this wasn't how you wanted your graduation to go." She stood up and hugged me tightly. "Are you kidding? That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. You were like Harvey Specter and Annalise Keating combined." She pulled back, her eyes shining with tears. "I'm so proud to be your daughter." Marcus joined the hug. "Mom, you're my hero." "Mine too," Cassandra said. "And I mean that. All these years, I thought you were just, I don't know, content to be in Dad's shadow. But you were playing the long game." "I was protecting myself," I corrected gently, "and protecting our family. Your father made his choices. I just made sure they came with consequences." The aftermath. The next few months were a whirlwind. Richard's firm did investigate, and they found even more irregularities than I'd uncovered. Client money that had been misplaced, billing discrepancies, the works. He resigned before they could fire him, but the bar investigation continued. The IRS was particularly interested in his offshore accounts. Turns out, hiding income from your wife also means hiding it from the government, and they take that very seriously. The divorce proceeded rapidly. With the evidence I had, Richard's attorney advised him to settle quickly and quietly. I got the house, half of all his retirement accounts, half of the hidden money after taxes and penalties, and a very generous alimony payment for 5 years. Not because I needed it, but because his attorney knew I could make things much worse if we went to trial. Meredith did lose her job. Last I heard, she moved back to Ohio. Richard tried to continue seeing her, but apparently she was less interested in him once he was unemployed, under investigation, and considerably poorer. As for me, I started my new job in August. The nonprofit Women's Financial Empowerment Network helps women in difficult situations, including those facing divorce, understand their finances and protect their assets. It turns out all my years of managing our household, making investments, and handling the family finances had prepared me perfectly for the role. I also started a blog called The Second Act about women who reinvent themselves after major life changes. It's become moderately popular, and I've been asked to turn it into a book. Cassandra passed the bar exam and started her job at a civil rights firm. She tells everyone about her mom, the COO, and how I taught her that revenge isn't about being cruel, it's about being smart. Marcus visits every month, and he always brings his girlfriend, who he wants me to meet formally soon. He says she reminds him of me. Strong, smart, and not to be underestimated. As for Richard, last I heard, he's living in a small apartment in Quincy, working as a consultant for a mid-tier firm that was willing to overlook his issues. He's allowed to practice law, but the Bar Association put him on probation for 3 years. His reputation in Boston legal circles is destroyed. He tried to call me once, about 3 months after the graduation. I let it go to voicemail. In the message, he said he never meant to hurt me, that things had gotten out of hand, that maybe we could talk about reconciliation. I deleted it without responding. Epilogue. People ask me if I regret how I handled things. They say I could have been more discreet, could have spared Cassandra the drama at her graduation, could have taken the high road. Here's what I tell them. I took the smart road. The high road is overrated when someone is trying to push you off a cliff. Richard counted on me being passive, being the civilized wife who would accept his crumbs and move on quietly. He counted on 23 years of watching me prioritize everyone else's needs over my own, of seeing me smooth over problems and keep the peace. What he didn't count on was that all those years I was learning about finance by managing our investments, learning about law by attending his firm functions and paying attention, learning about business by running our household like a corporation, learning about strategy by playing the long game. He thought he was announcing the end of our marriage that day. What he actually announced was his own downfall. Do I wish it had been different? Of course. I wish I'd married a man who honored his vows, who saw me as a partner rather than a convenience, who didn't think he could discard me like used goods when someone younger caught his eye. But given who he turned out to be, I regret nothing about how I responded. On Cassandra's birthday in October, we had a small celebration, just her, Marcus, and me. At the end of the evening, she raised her glass. "To Mom," she said, "who taught us that justice isn't just about the law, it's about knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less." "To Mom," Marcus echoed. I clinked glasses with my children and smiled. Outside the window, the autumn leaves were falling, and somewhere in Boston, Richard was facing the consequences of his choices. And I was exactly where I deserved to be, surrounded by people who loved me, doing work that mattered, and living a life I'd built on my own terms. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but mine was served with perfect timing, meticulous preparation, and a side of poetic justice. And it tasted absolutely delicious.